Welcome to Salute Your Sports Week 14. Kamenechev with Drew Brackett and Tom Castleman. Got a special Monday night show for you. The College Football Championship about to start. We're going to do a quick preview on it right before, or rather a pretty intense preview. Alabama, Ohio State, guys. Are you fired up about this game tonight?
Yeah, it looks like a really exciting game. What we saw out of the Ohio State-Clemson game, we thought Clemson might be the more favored team, but the fact that Ohio State was able to win by as much as it did certainly sets up for a really compelling matchup against an Alabama juggernaut that seemed pretty much unstoppable all season long. So it'll be great to see if this is going to be a good game tonight.
Yeah, it should be a fun one to watch. Very high scoring, of course, in this natty tonight.
Yeah, that over-under is at like 75, what is it, 70
74 and a half last I checked, which is like 2 minutes ago.
74 and a half. That is absolutely outrageous. That is a huge over-under. One of the last times I remember seeing an over-under this big was in 2015. It was like Texas Tech and Baylor, and I bet the over, and I hit. So I don't know. But anywho, Ohio State about a 9-point underdog now, so Alabama a pretty heavy favorite. We'll get right into picking this game. We're going to kind of break it down first, and we're going to start with the defenses, guys. Who do you think has a better defense, better run defense, better pass defense, and better defense overall? Because I think they're fairly close on the defense.
I mean, for me, it kind of goes to some of the top-end individual talent, and a name that people don't really hear a whole lot is Patrick Surtain Jr., the outstanding quarterback for the Crimson Tide. And the reason you don't hear his name all that much in games is usually because they're not throwing his way. I think that Alabama doesn't necessarily have quite the same reputation on defense as they used to even 10 years ago, but then again, neither does the SEC. It's a different football game. They still have a really good defense, and I think I like Alabama a little bit better on the pass defense in terms of being able to maybe pin in Justin Fields a little bit today, but definitely it's not going to be an easy task for them.
No, it's not. And, one could say that defense in this game is going to be irrelevant because it's going to be so high scoring. But, you have to think if you can disrupt Mac Jones, if you're Ohio State's defense, get to Mac Jones, make him make some difficult throws, that could really help your team out. And on the other side, Alabama's defense, you have to find a way to stop Justin Fields. That guy can get out of trouble very easily, so you're going to have to spy him. And if he wreaks havoc and runs all over the place and it's a 3rd and 8 and he drops back, you're rushing 3 or 4, you have a spy, and he runs for a 1st down, that's just devastating for a defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Alabama actually Tom, you mentioned their defense isn't quite what it used to be, but I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that because the game has changed. Mm-hmm. Nick Saban himself has said that it's an offensive game, a passing game. You need the receivers. And Alabama's still allowing about 19.5 points per game, which is pretty good considering they gave up a ton against Florida. You take that game out, they're actually doing a pretty good job. I would more say that Alabama's always been a little susceptible against the pass. And but overall, I think it's more of the game changing. In terms of who's better on defense, you mentioned that I think Alabama would have the slight edge because of the secondary play. Patrick Surtain, you mentioned, probably going to be a 1st-round pick. They have him going around the middle of the 1st round. OSU allowing about 261 yards a game passing. Alabama about 243. So Alabama a little bit better there. Ohio State, on the other hand, allowing 97 yards a game rushing, Bama about 108. Christian Barmore also could cause havoc for Alabama, another potential 1st-round pick. He might go later in the 1st round. So it's pretty close. I mean, Alabama allowing about 1 point less per game. I would say they are better because offenses are better in the SEC than the Big Ten. So for me, Alabama gets the slight edge on defense. But I don't know that the edge is that big. I think we saw it in both of their last games. They can both disrupt the quarterback. So they're going to have a hard time. I mean, these two offenses are the two most efficient offenses in college football this year, according to efficiency. So the defenses are going to have a hard time. It's going to come down to who can maybe force one turnover, who can maybe get off the field on a third down, maybe get a sack early to make it 3rd and long. But this game is going to be all about the offense, guys. Who do you think has a better offense in this game? Let's start specifically with maybe the easiest question, the wide receiver group.
Well, I mean, got to go with the Heisman on this one. Devonta Smith, I believe Jalen Waddle is I haven't seen any finalized injury reports, but I know that there's been talk that he should be good to go for the game. Even if it's in some limited capacity, there are a lot of talent evaluators who think that he's a better overall player than even Devonta Smith is, and we saw the season that Smith was able to put up. Ohio State Buckeyes, they're definitely not shabby at the skill positions either, but when you have Mac Jones, you have Devonta Smith, and you have Najee Harris all finishing in the top 5 for Heisman, it's pretty simple to see who has some of the better weapons on offense.
Yeah, I think Alabama has a more vastly wide receivers as far as just a variety of receivers. They have a lot of guys who they trust that can catch the football, whereas Ohio State, if you're looking at the stats, it's only a couple guys that they really trust in these situations. And that may change for this game, of course, but Alabama at the wide receiver position, Devonta Smith, the Heisman winner, he's always open downfield. And then you have Billingsley, who's made some catches, a couple catches in the last few games for them. So Alabama, I think, has the edge on the wide receiving end of things.
Yeah, Tom, you mentioned that Jalen Waddle might be a better prospect than Devonta Smith. I don't know who's better. They're both that great. I saw a mock draft today that had Smith going number 6 and Waddle going number 7. So slight edge Smith, but nonetheless, 2 wide receivers going in the top 10 in that draft. They also had this last year, they had Judy and Ruggs both go first round. Of course, you have Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, a wealth of talent at that position in recent years for Alabama, which kind of shows you how the game has changed. Nick Saban used to be obsessed, not to say that he doesn't want the best at every position, but the defensive line, the linebackers were kind of who Alabama went after. Now they're going after the wide receivers. I do think Alabama has a pretty big edge here because they average about 349 passing yards, and part of that is Mac Jones. He's great, but those wide receivers are phenomenal. I mean, Smith led college football in yards and catches, in touchdowns, and most of these categories by a pretty wide margin. He was a receiver that won the Heisman. Think about that alone. But he's not the only guy. We mentioned Jalen Waddle if he comes back, and even if he doesn't, Drew did say that they have a few other guys, which is true. Also, Ohio State has 2 main guys, but those guys did run by the Clemson passing defense. So I would say Ohio State's not shabby. Alabama definitely gets the edge. Running backs is where I think it's close because I think Najee Harris is probably the most talented, but Trey Sermon has really come on for Ohio State. Also, Master Teague is another very good runner, and Justin Fields, a quarterback that can run the ball. Ohio State actually did average more yards rushing this season than Alabama did. I think the running game is pretty much a wash to me in this one.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I mean, just looking at some of the numbers that Trey Sermon put up against a pretty staunch Clemson defense, rushed for 193 yards, averaging 6.2 yards per carry, and getting a score in that bowl game in the semifinal. It's definitely really close. I mean, Najee Harris has the counting numbers, but then again, he's also played twice as many games. I wonder where Trey Sermon would be if the Big Ten had played as many games as the SEC did. I think on talent, yeah, it's really, really close. I think it's kind of like up there with like how we're talking about with defense, like who can make a big play. I think that's going to be kind of, with the running game too, who's going to be able to bust through and kind of wear down the opposing team's defense, because that's going to start opening up some play action stuff and maybe take a little bit of pressure off the quarterbacks. Quarterback is the most important position, but anytime you can make their lives easier, go for it. So I think that's going to be a really, really key thing to watch in the game tonight. Real
quick, Tom, you mentioned Sermon going for 193 against who was at Clemson. Well, he hit over 300 against Northwestern, who, by the way, has a pretty good defense too. So very good running back for Ohio State there. And he's that guy who has that famous meme where like he's smiling at the camera, and he's become like very big on Twitter and social media for his smile. And kind of that, it first came up big when he saw that Dabo Clemson said Ohio State's number 11 team. Mm-hmm. Then there's that smile of him. Oh, I love it. What do you think about the running backs, Drew?
I think the talent is fairly even, and of course it's going to come down to the battle in the trenches, and which offensive line is going to get the push, right when the play starts. Which offensive line is going to help their running back the most? So we'll see what happens.
What about the big glorified position, the quarterback? Justin Fields was a Heisman finalist last year. This year he was not. He didn't play his best, played less games, but he was on fire against Clemson, outplaying Trevor Lawrence. You had Mac Jones on the other side, who's a Heisman finalist. Justin Fields projected as high as number 2 in certain mock drafts in the NFL. Mac Jones, all of a sudden, is now projected as a first-round pick as well. What do we think about these quarterbacks? Jones did put up a little bit better numbers, of course, but he also had those great receivers. What do we see in that QB showdown?
I think the biggest thing to look out for might actually be something that's not very fun to talk about. I think it might be health. Justin Fields took a pretty heavy shot from Skalski, a middle linebacker from the Clemson Tigers. That linebacker was tossed out of the game for targeting. Justin Fields said after that game, the doctors didn't even give him a diagnosis before setting him on the field. They just shot him up with something and let him go play out there. I think that's going to be a really important thing to watch. It's only been, like a week and a half, give or take, since taking that pretty serious hit. If he's fortunate and it was just something like a bruise, I think he should be good to go. But if it's something a little bit worse, if he has a fracture or something, unfortunately that could become a bigger storyline in this game than anybody wants it to. So I think on talent, obviously I think Justin Fields is much more versatile of a weapon. But that's just unfortunately something that we're going to have to watch all game long, every hit that he takes. That's another key. When you're mentioning the trenches, how well can the Buckeyes protect their quarterback?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting once Fields takes that first hit. How will he react to it, and will that impact him the rest of the game? So that's definitely a situation to monitor. But you mentioned both quarterbacks are very different, right? I mean, both of them can throw, but Justin Fields has that ability to scramble where Mac Jones is more of a pocket passer. I mean, the stats show it, and Mac Jones has 31 carries for 3 yards. So he's really not going to try to run the ball, whereas Justin Fields, you could see some design quarterback runs. Now, again, how is his health? We'll see. But the design quarterback run is in play for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think what gives Fields the edge is because he's a better runner. The thing that I really like about both of them is they both throw a beautiful deep ball. They both have incredible touch and incredible accuracy on the deep ball. I think Justin Fields has a little bit stronger arm if you're asked to throw the ball on a line when it comes to a zip. But this could be really fun because these two quarterbacks have some great receivers, some great weapons, and they both throw an incredible deep ball. So we could be in for some incredible long plays, long touchdowns. I think the other thing that I have heard about Justin Fields, because if you look at him, he has a cannon of an arm. He generally makes smart decisions. He can run the ball. He's the perfect prospect, but the only thing I hear on him, the one thing that some of the supposed experts, Todd McShay and company, say, Todd McShay underrates him, by the way, but they say that he tends to struggle when he has to go to a second or third read. He kind of focuses on one guy, and certainly I think he'll have a great game, but Alabama's corner's a little bit better than what he's used to seeing. Mm-hmm. So if the number one receiver is locked up, how is he going to progress to a second and third read? That'll be interesting to see. I do think that overall Alabama has to get the edge on offense just because of the skill players, and they averaged 48 points per game. Ohio State, 43.5. Not too far behind. But, 48 points. Alabama averaged 5 more points Alabama should have the edge on that side of the ball. But if Justin Fields plays the game of his life again like he did against Clemson, this game could be very, very close.
Absolutely, yeah, that'll be the fun thing to see. The kind of the interesting thing is that, kind of looking through this entire season, we were talking leading into the Clemson Ohio State game, Ohio State hadn't played their best football yet, and then they had for that game. It's going to be really intriguing to see. Is that a one-off? Is that maybe Clemson's defense isn't as great as it's been in years prior, and so they were able to be had a little bit? Or is it that OSU is really up to the challenge and going to go at, the big titan in the game right now? It's going to be a really, really fun game to watch for sure.
Yeah, other thing to mention is maybe the ACC, and I know it's hard to compare bowl games, but the ACC lost every bowl game, so maybe what Clemson did this year was not that impressive. Meanwhile, the Big Ten, they had a lot of teams get out because of COVID, but they were still 3-1 as a conference. The only loss coming into Indiana, losing to Ole Miss. Indiana was without their starting quarterback earlier this season. So the Big Ten has been very impressive. SEC obviously is always very impressive. What do you guys think about the head coaches? I mean, any chance that Nick Saban isn't the best coach in this game?
Not a chance. That's all I have to say about that.
I mean, Nick Saban is obviously an amazing coach, but Ryan Day, I mean, the guy's really put together some good wins in his career, and I know it hasn't been a very long career because he took over after Urban, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I think he's really filled the shoes nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Saban is the best coach in college football. His resume speaks for itself. If he wins this national championship, I believe he ties Bear Bryant, the all-time great Alabama coach for most national titles. He would have 7. Bryant had 7. Saban has 5 of them at Alabama. He had 1 at LSU, which also speaks to his ability to win in multiple places, except for the NFL where he couldn't win with the Miami Dolphins. But that's another story.
But who can? That's the real question.
Well, Flores, the current guy, he's doing pretty good, minus Week 17. They got that Week 17. Things are looking pretty good for the Dolphins. But, yeah, I think Nick Saban does get the edge. He's been in these games before. And I think, you can't pick a better college football coach than Nick Saban. Fun fact, the last time that the Cleveland Browns won a playoff game, we'll get into the NFL, was 94. Belichick was the coach. Nick Saban was the defensive coordinator. And so we had all sorts of history. We'll get into that Browns beatdown of the Steelers later. But kind of finalizing this game, I think based on our discussion so far, I can kind of see where we're headed with this game. But, guys, who do you think does win the national championship between Alabama and Ohio State?
I think there are 2 certainties that we can count on today. Nick Saban ate 2 oatmeal cream pies for breakfast, as is his tradition from what I've read, and that the Tide's going to roll. I think that they're just in a completely different weight class, so to speak, from pretty much everybody in college football this year. They've just been on a tear that is unlike any other program that we've seen this year. And, I think Tide's going to roll.
Tied in a close game.
Drew always does that. He always says close game. And sometimes he's right, sometimes he's not. He just wants to make it respectable. So, Tom, Tide rolls. You think they'll cover that 9-point spread? That's a pretty big spread for a national title game.
It's a really big spread for a national title game, and Justin Fields, I think, is good enough to keep it close. I think he's too good to let the Buckeyes get blown out. So I think it'll be within the number. I don't know if I'd necessarily lock that in, but I think within a possession is more than fair.
Yeah, I might lock it in that Ohio State covers in a close game, as Drew would say. But I think Alabama will win. I think it'd be very hard for Alabama to lose. They had 1 close game all year. Really, it's crazy because they played a conference-only schedule in the SEC. The 2 teams they didn't play in the SEC this season, by the way, Vanderbilt and what was the other one? The 2 worst teams. I had it in my head last week.
Was it South Carolina?
South Carolina, I believe, whatever the two bottom teams in the SEC were this year were the only two teams Alabama didn't play. So they went undefeated against the better SEC teams. In addition, they demolished Notre Dame. So I think Alabama's going to win. I think it could be close, but I'll pick Alabama to win. And if they do win, we'll start talking about, are they the greatest college football team ever? You know, certainly LSU's team last year, ironically, back-to-back years, we have two of the all-time great teams. But Justin Fields could stop that discussion. I'll take Alabama, but Ohio State winning would not be a shocker to me. The other thing, too, Ohio State is trying to join Alabama and Clemson as two-time national champs since the playoff began. So they kind of want to get in there and be a part of the big three.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're kind of on the same page about this Alabama-Ohio State game. I don't know that we'll be on the same page on all the NFL playoff games. I think we're looking at 4 games. We're looking at 2 games that are sort of no-brainer picks. Of course, they'll probably be missed because it's the NFL and it's crazy and it's a pandemic and who knows what's going to happen. But probably the 2 really tight games are Bills-Ravens and Saints-Bucks. We'll start on the NFC side. New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints beat the Bucks both times they played this season, including 38-3 in their most recent matchup. But since that game, Tampa Bay is playing pretty good football, guys. What do we see? Round 3, Brady versus Breeze. First time they've ever met in the playoffs. Could be the one and only playoff matchup, assuming Breeze retires, which is what we're hearing these days. What do you guys see in this matchup? Who do you like? First impressions?
I mean, my first impression of this game is that our first impressions of this matchup are completely shifted from what they were earlier in the season. You know, we talked about how the Saints have pretty much owned the Buccaneers so far, and yet they come into this game as 3-point favorites, which is, you know, slightly above what odds makers are giving home teams this year as a home field advantage. And we're seeing 2 teams kind of playing at different levels. I mean, the Saints were rolling at one point and then just kind of sort of muddled their way through beating a pretty pedestrian Bears team last week. So it's definitely a little bit concerning. I thought the Saints were going to come out firing, and maybe that's just because, you know, Alvin Kamara recovering from COVID. Michael Thomas has had any number of ailments this year. Maybe they're just kind of, you know, trying to round into form. But yeah, like my first impressions of this game is that it feels like it's going to be different. It's not going to be the beatdown that we've seen earlier.
To be clear, Tom, though, the Saints still were winning 21-3. It wasn't because of a late touchdown. The Bears go up 21-9. Breeze goes over the top. It might have been 28-3. And then, of course, you talk about the Saints struggling, though, but the Buccaneers only beat Washington's 4th-string QB, a backup XFL quarterback of the St. Louis Battlehawks earlier this season. They only beat them by 8. So if we're going off just this last week, neither team really was that impressive in its win.
No, but you have to give credit to the Bucks for winning on the road, right? I mean, you go into Washington, it's cold there, unlike in Tampa, and they go ahead and get that win on the road while the Saints are in the dome, you know, nice and warm in there, 72 degrees. So obviously the next game, next Sunday's game is in New Orleans, so you have to think about, well, can Brady do it in a dome? Probably.
Yeah, the conditions are definitely conducive. Oh, go ahead, comment.
Sorry, to be clear, the home team in the playoffs were 2-4 on Wild Card Weekend. So again, we've talked about it all year in terms of the COVID, how there's not really fans in almost all these stadiums, and the stadiums that do have them were at smaller capacity. I don't know. I think you're giving the Bucs a little bit too much credit. It's a playoff game. I get it. Playoff road game. But there were favorites against Washington. You know, New Orleans and Tampa Bay both were favorites. They both won. Tampa Bay's game probably a little bit closer than they wanted it to be. I don't know. This home field thing in this season really doesn't seem to mean very much. and I think, it showed. Wild Card Weekend, the only home teams that won were the Saints, who were the biggest favorite over the Bears, and the Bills, who barely beat the Colts, quite frankly. So, I don't know. I don't put too much stock in the fact that it's in New Orleans. For me, that is almost meaningless. What does matter, though, when you look at the last two matchups is Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown has 5 touchdowns in his last 4 games. The first time these two teams played was Brown's first game as a Buccaneer. So I think Antonio Brown has done wonders for the Buccaneers offense. In general, that offense is playing much, much better than they did earlier in the season when the two teams played. And a lot of it, though, is going to go down to battle the trenches. We look at all the skill positions, but Tom Brady, when he's given time to throw, still looks like one of the all-time great quarterbacks. Tom Brady, when he's pressured, really struggles, and that's kind of been the story his whole career, but it's more so this year. The Saints are very good at pressuring the quarterback. If they can pressure Brady, the Saints should win, but if the Tampa Bay offensive line holds up, all of a sudden Brady, with all those weapons, then the Buccaneers have a chance. This really could go either way.
Yeah, and I think the key is going to come down to, oddly enough, how does the Saints offense perform against the Tampa Bay defense? The Tampa Bay defense hasn't been quite as stout as it was at the very beginning of the year. But to go back to that Bears game, neither was the Chicago Bears defense. They've been pretty pedestrian, kind of middle of the pack as well, and the Saints only put up 21 points. That's the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit more. I think the Saints defense is going to do what it needs to do against Tampa Bay. It's just a matter of, can Drew Brees just kind of like orchestrate the skilled players? He's one of the lowest yards per attempt in the NFL. Basically, the Saints' entire offense is, we're going to keep the ball in front of you, and then we're going to let our playmakers make plays. So it's going to be up. It's worked, but it's also one of those things where if you don't have to worry about Drew going over the top, maybe you don't have to play. You can play up a little bit more. You can try to force. You can try to jam those receivers, mess up those timing routes. You can create turnovers off of that. Drew Brees' arm strength isn't as strong as it used to be. So I think that's a concerning thing to look out for. I do like the Saints in this one, regardless home or on the road. I think they just overall have more talent and they're more well-rounded. But I don't expect it to be the beatdown that it was earlier this year.
No, I mean, I like the Bucks.
You're going to take the Bucks?
Yeah, I like the Bucks to win.
So I've gone back and forth on this game just because you would expect me to be Homer New Orleans. I will say that the teams that have won the first two are 14-8 in such matchups. So we often hear it's hard to beat a team a third time. Well, in general, more often than not, roughly 2/3 of the time, it has happened. I think the Saints are better on defense. I do. I think the Saints have a better running back, but I do think the Buccaneers have a more explosive passing game because they're better in the QB spot right now, and they're better in the wide receiver spot, even with a healthy Michael Thomas. I'm going back and forth. I've changed my mind so many times, but I'm going to pick the Saints just because I think the Saints are a little bit better, but because we know it's Tom Brady and we know he's the luckiest quarterback of all time, he may get a call to go his way, he may get a bounce to go his way, and the Buccaneers may find a way to win that game. But if I'm going to have to make a pick, I'll go New Orleans.
Now, I know you two have a little bit of a rivalry between yourselves. Comment, how much of your pick is influenced by the fact that Drew went out and declared that he's for the Buccaneers? If he'd gone Saints, would you have gone the other way? Does that kind of, in that back and forth right up to decision time?
Absolutely. I love Drew. If I look better than Drew, it makes my day. And if I look worse, you won't hear me talking about it. That's for sure.
No. And the interesting thing out of what you said was Tom Brady is the luckiest quarterback of all time. Do we know who the unluckiest quarterback of all time is?
Drew Brees.
No, Tony Romo is the unluckiest quarterback of all time in NFL history.
We are probably on the same page. Tony Romo, by the way, is like 4th all-time in career passer rating. Some people don't really realize. Also getting inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. He's up for that. Sean Payton, the Saints coach, they both played at Eastern Illinois. Tony Romo was pretty much second or third in all the record books, and Peyton was second or third as quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo was first in all of them. So fun little connection there. I'll go New Orleans, but man, a Buccaneers win would not surprise me. You do talk about the unlucky in the playoffs. Well, Drew Brees is only 9-8, and a lot of that has been because he hasn't had good defenses. Ironically, I see a lot of what I saw in Peyton Manning and the Broncos, and I believe 2015 it was. We had all those years where Peyton Manning was the top quarterback or a top 2 or 3 guy in the NFL. His offenses put up the most points. He didn't win in the playoffs because his defenses were terrible. And, and of course he had one Super Bowl. Drew Brees also has one Super Bowl. But consistently, their teams were roughly 500 throughout the playoffs. And given for as great as those guys are, you would think they can get 2 to 3 rings no problem. Well, in Peyton Manning's last season, his arm strength was worse. It was his worst season, and he won the Super Bowl because of the defense. Could Drew Brees do that now? That's an interesting parallel. I will say Brees is playing a little bit better than Manning was back then, and I'll say that the league is different now where offense matters more than it used to, but maybe not quite as much as I thought, because if you're very good at something, you'll find a way to win, because the St. Louis Rams won against Seattle basically without a quarterback. They started their backup. He gets hurt. They bring in Jared Goff with the injured thumb. He barely could throw the ball the first 3 quarters. They were winning anyways, and they win by 10 points on the road at Seattle. Big matchup in the next game. Green Bay hosting the Rams. We got the top scoring offense in the NFL in the Packers against the top scoring defense in the NFL in the Rams. The 4 previous matchups where it was the number 1 offense against the number 1 defense, the defense did win 3 out of 4. So this is kind of a measuring game, because if St. Louis does beat Green Bay, it'll tell you that the era of defense winning championships isn't over. If Green Bay wins handedly, perhaps it's time to think about, offense wins championships. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I know it's just one game, but something to look at in this one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any overarching, philosophical battles to be, staked out in this game one way or the other, but I think it's definitely a matchup that low-key the Packers really didn't want to see. You talk about, what's the strength of the Packers team? It's, on offense, 3 guys that are on the skill position side of things, with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Aaron Jones at running back, and then Davante Adams at wide receiver. Jalen Ramsey has shown that he is pretty much inarguably the best covered cornerback in the NFL right now. That means you're taking out one of the most important players on that Packers offense with Davante Adams. Now, he has a special connection with Aaron Rodgers. I know that announcers like to talk how, Aaron Rodgers had Jordy Nelson. Now he has Davante Adams. I'm sure they'll be able to work something out, but it's not as if Russell Wilson doesn't have a great connection with DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, and those guys aren't able to do anything against Jalen Ramsey. I think that's going to be a really, really interesting thing to see. And then also, who can stop Aaron Donald? You have arguably 2 of the best players in the NFL at 2 different defensive positions. I think that, I didn't really think much of the Rams because of the quarterback situation, but just the role that their defense is on, they could really fluster Green Bay in this one. And this one might end up being a little bit more of a surprise than people think.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely going to fluster Green Bay, and you also have to remember Cam Akers, the running back for the Rams. Really good game on Saturday. He ran for 131 yards and a touchdown, and that helped the offense because you had Wolford in, and then you had Goff, so you needed the running game to be strong. It was strong. As for Sunday's game, or whenever it is, Saturday's game against the Packers, I think the Packers win 28-24.
Okay.
Specific score and everything.
Yeah, he's got it all lined up for us. We'll look out for that. Yeah, the Packers about a 7-point favorite, so Drew does think the Rams will cover. The Rams, of course, were an underdog and won outright. They were one of 2 teams to do that last week. The Rams and Browns were both underdogs and both won outright. This could go either way. I see it, 2 ways. I see it. The Rams either win a really really close game, or the Packers could win, a more decisive win. That 7-point spread, probably pretty good. But Green Bay has actually played pretty decent most of the season on defense. They're not per se a juggernaut, but I do think that Rams quarterback situation is bound to catch up with them. I think if they were going up against, someone else, not the Packers, who can put up a ton of points, maybe they'd have a better matchup. I think Seattle was a better matchup for them just because those two teams know each other so well in the division. And also, Seattle really, a lot of people talked about the Steelers, how disappointing they were down the stretch. But Seattle, quite frankly, the second half of the season was almost inexplicable what happened to their offense. We saw their defense get better, so they still racked up a decent amount of wins. But Seattle's offense went from being the best offense in the league to, quite frankly, being mediocre. And I don't know what happened there, and it doesn't make any sense because you have Russell Wilson, you have Metcalf, and you have Lockett, and you had the running game, ironically, actually played pretty good down the stretch relative to where they were. So the Seattle passing game is almost as much of a perplexity as the Pittsburgh running game. I will pick the Packers in this game, but nothing would shock me in any of these games because after what I saw in the Cleveland Browns-Pittsburgh Steelers game, the Cleveland Browns were down 4 coaches, including their head coach because of COVID. They were down 4 players. They practiced like one day into the week. They've lost 17 straight games on the road against Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger is 23-2-1 in his career against the Browns before this game. And the Cleveland Browns, about a touchdown underdog, 6 points, just under a touchdown, go into Pittsburgh and win by 16. Was it 16 was the final there? 16 points, 45-29, I believe, was the final. One of the wildest things, they jumped out to a 28-0 lead in the first quarter. The Steelers had 3 turnovers in the first quarter, 5 for the game. Ben Roethlisberger had 501 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He threw like 65 passes, 47 completions. One of the craziest stat lines I've ever seen, guys. After the Browns beat the Steelers as a heavy underdog, are you giving them a fighting chance against the defending Super Bowl champ Kansas City Chiefs, who are about 10-point favorites? The Chiefs haven't won a game by more than a touchdown in 2 to 3 months.
I mean, would I be out of order to say no? I really don't give Cleveland that much of a chance. I mean, we're talking about teams that are, quite frankly, in 2 completely different spots. We have Ben Roethlisberger with his vast history against the Cleveland Browns, but he's at the end of his career as opposed to, the best player in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes, running this Kansas City offense, and it was sputtering a little bit, but we've talked about it earlier this season, and years and years and years, Andy Reid is fantastic coming off of a bye week. So I think that you have a coaching edge. You have a better offense in KC than Pittsburgh has. You have a defense where it's not as good, but can still be opportunistic, can still make some plays, whether that's their defensive tackles at Chris Jones, and then you have Tyrann Mathieu roaming in that free safety position. You've got enough playmakers on defense that I think Kansas City can win this one probably pretty handily. I still believe in Kansas City just to kind of roll over. I think Browns can keep up, but I think their defense is not going to be able to do nearly enough to stop this Chiefs offense.
Yeah, I think the Browns have some serious problems in this game. I think they're playing the best team in the NFL, and they played the Steelers, and, they broke that game open. But the Steelers, quite frankly, I don't think they were very good. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I know someone who is, and he's like, yeah, they're not that great. I don't know how they're in the playoffs and where they're seated, and I don't know how they were 11-0. It was just clicking, I guess. So I think the Chiefs are going to win very, very easily. It may be a backdoor cover situation with the spread, but the Chiefs won't have any problems against the Browns on Sunday.
A couple things to look at. The Browns 22nd in the NFL against the pass. The Chiefs number 1 passing the ball. But on the other side, Cleveland number 2 or 3, I think number 3 running the ball, the best 1-2 duo with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. The one weakness the Chiefs have is against the run. So that may be something to look for in this game. I will say one other thing, though, that scares me a little bit, and I'll get into this later. What scares me is that the Chiefs starters basically will not have played for 3 weeks in a row. They rested their starters week 17, knowing they had a bye week, and we saw what happened in that Browns-Steelers game. I tell you what, if they had a do-over, I think Pittsburgh might win that game. If they had a fifth quarter, Pittsburgh might win that game. They got down 28-0. You look at the Steelers won the game 3 out of the 4 quarters, but you get down 28-0, there's no way you're going to win in the NFL. Even Mahomes would have a hard time coming back from that. He might be the one to do it. But I think what scares me is the fact that the Chiefs haven't played in a few weeks. And the last time they played against the Falcons was the offense is probably their worst game with Patrick Mahomes. They scored like 17 points only, I think it was. I'd have to look that up. And I think they only had one other lower-scoring game. I actually attended it. I covered the game a couple years ago. It was Chiefs-Colts, Sunday Night Football, and the Chiefs had like 4 offensive linemen out. Mahomes gets hurt during the game. Tyreek Hill wasn't playing. So this was the worst we've ever seen the Chiefs offense look while they were all together and healthy against a secondary that was horrible in Atlanta. Now, I'm still going to pick the Chiefs. There's no way I'm going to pick against the Chiefs. I am Mr. Kansas City Chiefs. They were 14-1 when playing their starters this season, but I don't know that it's going to be as comfortable. I might flip it the other way on that 10-point line, Drew. I might say the Chiefs might be up like 7 and they score late to cover or just to wash or something, but I don't know that it's going to be as comfortable, particularly early in the game. Look for the Chiefs to have some rust, but I think as the game goes along, come the fourth quarter, the Chiefs are going to win the game.
Yeah, I just don't see a scenario. Like, you look at the way that Cleveland was able to beat Pittsburgh, it involved Ben Roethlisberger throwing 4 interceptions. I mean, do any of us see Patrick Mahomes making that many mistakes? I mean, part of that is, is the eyes, but I think more of that is, Ben Roethlisberger's arm is just not what it used to be. We obviously know that's not an issue with Patrick Mahomes. So I think it took 4 turnovers and 48 points to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't see the Browns duplicating that performance.
We'll see. I mean, I agree, but I don't know. It's a crazy season. Finally, the last game of this divisional round, the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills only a 2.5-point favorite right now. It opened at 3. It's gone down to 2.5.
It's down to 2 now.
It's
at least on Bovada.
So this is considered probably the most evenly matched game. I think New Orleans and Tampa's up there, but I think if you had to pick one, that would be up right up there with it. It would be this one, guys. The Ravens and the Bills, probably the 2 hottest teams in the NFL right now. Counting the playoffs, Baltimore has won 6 straight. The Bills have won, I believe, 7 straight right now. I'd have to double-check that. The Packers also have won 6 straight. But these 2 teams probably playing their best ball of the season, most consistent football of the season. What do we see in this game? Both coming off wild card wins.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that they're both playing, their best ball right now, given the fact that neither team helped hit the over. Those games were a lot more defensive than I thought they were going to be, and I don't know if that'll be the case this time. I mean, we saw a little bit of kind of like some narrative shifting, I guess. Both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson picking up their first playoff victories as young quarterbacks, both in their 3rd year. Both teams that actually kind of relied on defense a little bit more than offense to get it done, surprisingly enough, considering how they've been winning games recently. I don't know how I feel on this one. I could go either way. I think both are really likable franchises. Both are really likable quarterbacks, coaches. Everything's really nice and, lots of good storylines on this game. I just don't know where it's going to go on this one.
It's
who's picked to say who I go with, because to preface this, I have been on the Lamar Jackson hate train, saying that, the fact that the Ravens are last in the NFL in passing yards, they're not going to win in the playoffs doing that. But I'll tell you this, the Bills are 17th against the run, which is not that good. Baltimore's number one running team. I could see Baltimore posing a threat just with their running game alone in this game. I think what will be interesting to see, though, is how the Ravens do against the Bills passing game, which I believe the Bills have the second best passing game in the NFL after the Chiefs. The Ravens, if you look at the statistics, they tell you they have a good pass defense, but then you take a look at some of the teams they've played. They've played the Jets, they've played the Giants, they've played the Eagles, they've played the Jaguars, they've played the Patriots. Those 5 games alone, they're playing against 5 of the very worst, if not the 5 worst passing offenses in the league. Baltimore's defense actually struggled mightily against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I know it's Mahomes and the Chiefs, but he threw up 4 touchdown passes against them, nearly 400 yards. Didn't even play much late in that game or try late in the game. Also, Baker Mayfield went well over 300 pass yards in that epic Monday Night Football 47-42 win for the Ravens. So this is one of those things where I don't know what Baltimore defense shows up if we see that vulnerability in the secondary. Say that one twice. The Bills could win that game, but I've been saying the Ravens aren't going to do good, but they made me eat my words. I'm not convinced that they won't do it again, but I'm going to pick the Bills because they're more explosive, and I like Josh Allen and Diggs and Beasley to have a big day against the Ravens secondary.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the Ravens' defense against Derrick Henry, just limiting him throughout the entire game. The only issue was A.J. Brown, and the Bills have Diggs, of course, the number one wide receiver, and Josh Allen, better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. So the Ravens' pass defense has to play well against the Bills. But Lamar Jackson, when he broke that 48-yard run, whatever it was, that touchdown run, I mean, I was like, holy cow. I didn't expect it. I don't think many people did. I thought he was going to get sacked or whatever, but I made a 10-yard game, but no, he goes and scores the touchdown. That was a huge swing in that game. And when you have a quarterback that can do that, if I'm the Bills defense, I really have to be nervous because he's not just going to go out of bounds. He's going to try to score. And I would say he's probably the most athletic player on the field. And we all know, especially in the NBA, when you have the most athletic player on the court or the field, you got a chance to win. So I give the Ravens a very good chance to win. The fact that it's in Buffalo, the Bills play very well at home. I don't know. This one's going to go either way. It's probably going to be a field goal. It will be the difference.
So who are you going to take? I need to know who to pick.
I think you go with the Bills in this situation.
I'm going to go with the Bills, too. Sorry to be anticlimactic. I do like the Bills in this one. There's just something to like about the Bills and what they're doing. I think they had their first playoff win, what was it, since 95? I didn't write it down, but off the top of my head, I believe it was that, and if not that, something close to that. This home stuff, though, to me, I just don't really care at this point in this pandemic season. I think whether this game were in Baltimore or Buffalo wouldn't make a major difference. I just think the Bills are a little bit more explosive. The Ravens, though, it's crazy because they say football is a game of inches. If you watch the Ravens offense, one drive they look like a dumpster fire. And then the next drive they look like, the fastest 20 seconds in football, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever you want to call it. Because if you look at some of the things they do, they really don't pass the ball down the field. They don't do that, hardly ever. Lamar Jackson has some success from time to time passing the ball, but it's usually intermediate passing. So you're looking at a lot of runs, and they may have a 3-and-out where they can't move the ball anywhere. And then all of a sudden the next drive, they get a 6-yard run, 7-yard run, then they get like a 10-yard pass, and all of a sudden, boom, 40-yard run for Lamar Jackson, 40-yard run for J.K. Dobbins. It's like they're not doing anything impressive for 80 to 90% of the snaps. Like you have the Chiefs. The Chiefs do a lot of impressive stuff throughout the game. Obviously, you're not going to have 20-yard gains every time, but you look at the Chiefs' offense, you kind of feel like they're doing something impressive for a chunk of the game. You look at the Ravens' offense, for a chunk of the game, they're doing absolutely nothing. And then all of a sudden, you get this one play, and somehow they find a way to win. But I think that they're going to have maybe one big play for Lamar Jackson, but he's going to need 2 to 3 to beat the Bills, because I can tell you this for sure. You can take this one to the bank. The Bills will score more than 13 points, which the Titans did. You can't win an NFL playoff game scoring 13 points. Lamar Jackson was good, but the big narrative of that game was the Titans' offense and how bad it was. Also, have to give him a lot of credit for shutting down Derrick Henry, but I think it's a little bit easier to shut down a running game than a passing game, because you load the box and you use your physicality, you can shut down a running game. But a passing game, it's not like you can double team everyone. So it's much harder to stop a great passing offense. You can possibly stop them from going deep. But what I really like about the Bills' passing game is Cole Beasley is great at the intermediate routes. Diggs also a very good route runner. So even if they don't let the deep ball, the Bills could beat them 10, 15 yards down the field. Also, the big difference to me is Josh Allen. He can throw and run. It makes him more of a threat than Lamar Jackson. Give me the Bills.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the difference in game plans, because it was very clear that the Ravens came out with a plan to stop Derrick Henry. They let him beat them back in whenever they met. I think it was like week 8, 9, 10, something like that in the middle of the season. Derrick Henry was able to beat the Ravens. They were bound and determined to not let that happen. Ryan Tannehill beat them, and he wasn't able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how that shifts, because the Bills don't have a single great rusher. They haven't had any single rusher get more than 100 yards in a game all season long. So do they maybe do something where they're dropping back a little bit more? They're playing some more zone, dropping 7, 8 guys to get some more to cover up those intermediate routes. I'll admit I wrote down Bills over Ravens at the start of all of this, and that's probably going to be the case. But I'm going to go hard over head on this. So I'm going to pick Ravens to win this.
I love it. Well, it'll be interesting to watch in the coming weeks. We're going to sneak in a little NBA talk here. We haven't talked NBA in a few weeks. I thought we should get some NBA talk. In the coming weeks, we'll start doing some college basketball as well here, as college football leaves us sadly. But we're going to do a little overreaction segment right now. So right now, the Philadelphia 76ers, who are hit harder by COVID than any team. By the way, real quickly, before I forget, Philadelphia fired its football coach, Doug Peterson, before we leave the NFL. Was that a good move? I think yes.
I think it was necessary.
Yes, needed to happen. Yeah, I agree.
And very rare you'll hear me say that a team that had a coach win the Super Bowl gets rid of him a few years later. But for me, the end of the line was the Jalen Hurts putting in Seinfeld move. You got to play to win all the games. I didn't like what he did, so he's gone. The Sixers, meanwhile, though, have a new coach this year in Doc Rivers. Philly off to a great start, top of the Eastern Conference. They are hit now by the COVID cases. Steph Curry's brother is out. We just had a couple NBA games get canceled today and tomorrow. But once they get going, do we think that the Sixers, and they're still playing, by the way, most teams are, but do we think the Sixers will make the NBA Finals?
I mean, they're off to a really hot start, but I think it is an overreaction to say that they're a favorite to come out of the East or anything along those lines. I mean, we had that giant glut of teams that were in the playoffs last year, and as we did our NBA preview, we didn't really see much movement of any of those teams kind of falling out of the playoff picture. There's still too many good teams in an East where They have a lot of good teams, maybe not the one great team. Kind of looking at a little bit of a parallel of, the NFC to the NBA Eastern Conference. But, it is too early to tell. I'm going to say, that's an overreaction to say that they're going to be representing the East in the finals.
Yeah, I think the Bucks or the Celtics have the much better chance to represent the East in the finals. And right now, the 76ers are just playing really well. And, you look at the standings for the NBA, they have 3 losses. Everybody has 3 losses. The first 3 teams have 3 losses in the East. So it's a very open season, I think, at least in the regular season. But, of course, we know the NBA regular season doesn't matter that much. Who really knows? I don't think you can overreact to them being in first place. Or I think it is an overreaction, yes.
I would say the NBA regular season matters more to the Philadelphia 76ers than any team in probably NBA history.
Oh, geez.
The Sixers last season were 31-4 at home and 12-26 on the road. And we also saw them struggle mightily in the bubble. Granted, they had a big injury, but still, this season, 5-1 at home, 2-2 on the road. There's something about this team that they seem to, for whatever reason, more so than any team I've ever seen. It's not even just the records, but they have these convincing performances at home than these absolute duds on the road. So the Sixers, if they can get the 1 seed, do stand the fighting chance to make the NBA Finals. Now, if they get the 2, 3, or 4 seed where they'll be forced to go on the road, then I don't think so. Do I think they're the favorite? I struggle, but I say they have more of a chance if they can get the 1 seed. I still like the Bucks and the Nets to do better. But also in the East right now, go ahead, Tom.
Quick, question on that. We don't necessarily know what the playoffs are going to be looking like. One thing, that's not really an overreaction is life is hard outside the bubble. The NBA had a massive success with the playoffs last year and like a little bit of lead into the playoffs, not having a single COVID case. We've already had a couple of games canceled and a number of teams playing with the bare minimum of 8 rostered players. We could end up going to a bubble situation where all of a sudden, poof, number 1 seed doesn't even really matter that much in this scenario because we just don't know where things are going to be come, April, May, and June this year. So, that's something to keep an eye out on as well. We're still not, unfortunately, anywhere close to having a normal season as we're used to.
Yeah, I normally applaud the NBA for the choices they make. I think Adam Silver does a great job. The fact that they're not playing in a bubble, given that these arenas don't have fans, I think the Grizzlies just experimented with a few fans. But the point of playing in your home arena, to me, is playing in front of fans. So if you're going to bring the fans in, then generate the revenue, let people have fun, whatever, then you can play in your home arenas. But the fact that they're playing inside the home basketball arenas with no fans, I don't know. I get that it's hard for your family, but I'd almost argue maybe you allow the players to bring their family in the bubble and you have some sort of things where the family members get tested. If the family members leave the bubble, they must get tested before they're allowed back in the bubble. So some sort of compromise to allow them to have some semblance of a life, but also, I don't know, it's all complicated. But to me, I think the main point of them not playing in a bubble is for fans, and we don't have the fans. What do you guys think about the Knicks? Drew Brackett is a big Knicks fan, or maybe he was just a Carmelo Anthony fan. Do you guys think the Knicks will make the playoffs? They're in position right now.
Drew, I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I think the Knicks, they're just full of so many young guys on that squad. And so, obviously, there's talent on that team. Now, will they hold it together for an entire season? I'm not so sure about that, but this young talent of Julius Randle, Alec Burks, R.J. Barrett, the Duke star, Austin Rivers, Mitchell Robinson, these guys were really good in college, and now they're in the NBA. And, of course, they are very young, not a lot of experience. So they're winning games, sure. But when it comes later in the season, will they be, could they get the 8th seed? Maybe. But I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at these early season wins for teams like the Knicks is that the wins are money in the bank, so to speak. You can't take them away. Even if you fade down the stretch, that can still help you get into the playoffs. I think, under the current playoff system, I think they're probably going to be like that 9-10 spot, maybe with a chance to upset the 7 or 8 seed respectively to get in. I think what this really highlights is the quality of coach that Tom Thibodeau is. Former Chicago Bulls head coach, and I'm definitely very familiar with seeing him take a pretty talented team, but certainly not the most talented team, and maximize not just each individual player's talents, but also how they play collectively as a whole. I mean, I'm looking at the New York Knicks roster, and they do have some very talented pieces. And right now, I believe they're 5-5. But I think coming into the season, a lot of people expected a lot worse out of, probably the third flagship franchise out of the NBA. If they're playing, really well, they're right up there with the Lakers in terms of visibility and Q rating. He's got them playing really, really well, and that's a credit to the type of coach that he is. It does wear on people. There's a reason why he's the former head coach of the Chicago Bulls, but definitely has them in a really good place.
Yeah, they're third in the league in defense, which is a calling card of Tom Thibodeau. I think they're going to be just outside the playoffs. We look at the Heat and Nets, two teams that we expect to be in the playoffs, outside of playoff position right now. Also, the Raptors outside of playoff position. They may have more concerns. But I do have an interesting comment on our final overreaction. The Phoenix Suns, who are top of the Western Conference, tied with the Lakers, I believe. The Phoenix Suns will make the Western Conference Finals. Is that an overreaction?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
She's much more firm on this.
Yeah, I mean, the West, it is an overreaction.
Not at all.
I think the West is just too stacked for the Phoenix Suns to make the finals. You have LeBron James and the Lakers. You have the Clippers.
Finals. Western Conference Finals is the question.
Oh. Yeah, it's feasible, but I think when it comes down to it, probably not. I think you'll have the Lakers and possibly the Clippers, or the Rockets really aren't doing good this season. 40. Wow. I guess I haven't paid attention much to the NBA standings, and the Nuggets. Wow, what happened? Again, they're all within 2 games, so I guess the standings really don't matter at this point.
I will tell you this: the Phoenix Suns will play in the Western Conference Finals.
Oh no!
It is not an overreaction. I'll tell you why. Because the Clippers have the worst mental toughness I've seen in the history of any sports team. We just saw them blow a 15 to 20 point lead to the Warriors a couple nights ago. What does that remind you of? They blew 3 double-digit leads when they were up 3-1 against the Nuggets. The Clippers lost by 50 to the Mavericks. I know Kawhi Leonard sat, but that's part of the problem. We got them resting one game. We got them blowing leads another game. There's no sorts of consistency against the Clippers. I watched the Chicago Bulls completely dismantle that Clippers defense. Zach LaVine looked like Stephen Curry, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, Michael Jordan all into one. The Clippers are a joke. These guys have never made the Western Conference Finals. I don't trust the Clippers. Paul George is the most overhyped player in the playoffs. So you give me Chris Paul to this Suns team that has Booker, one of the best young scorers in the NBA. It has Ayton, who's a force down low. They're good on the perimeter. They're good down low. They've got the culture. They're number 2 in defense in the NFL right now, or the NBA right now. You mentioned the Nuggets and the Rockets have both kind of faded a little. I do think the Nuggets are going to step back up, but I don't know that Jamal Murray is quite the player he showed he was in the bubble. Now, Jokic is. That man is a star. But as far as Murray, I don't know if we'll see the same from him. I think the Suns right now have a better core than the Nuggets, and they probably have just as much talent and have more toughness than the Clippers. Chris Paul is a great leader. Every team he's gone to has significantly improved the following season. He took the Rockets to the Western Conference Finals. They leave. They're nobody now. I look for the Suns to beat the Clippers, to beat the Nuggets, whoever they face. The only other team that actually I would argue is an even tougher test for them than the Clippers is the Mavericks. The Mavericks right now were the most efficient team on offense last season ever. Their offense is down a little bit, but Kristaps Porzingis is coming back, and the Mavericks right now are fourth in defense. So to me, the Lakers are going to make the Western Conference Finals, and then it's going to be the Suns or Mavericks. So forget about the Clippers, forget about the Nuggets. Give me the Suns or Mavericks to make the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it comes down to what those matchups are going to be in the playoffs. I mean, the Suns currently sitting at that number 2 spot in the conference, but Drew, as you mentioned, it's early. All these teams are within just a handful of games of each other. You know, it's a very real possibility where the Suns could probably maybe end up in that 4 or 5 spot, which is, you know, I think a pretty good spot for them to come out of the first round, but then they have to potentially deal with the Lakers. I don't necessarily think the Suns will fall all the way down to that, you know, 8 seed spot and have to face LA. But I think that's going to be part of it too, is a lot of it's going to be who do they match up with and how do they match up with them. If they have to go up against Dallas, you know, that's going to be a bit of a struggle too, trying to get to the finals out of that conference. So I'm going to say I don't think that they will. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, because they've shown a ton of improvement, more than I thought that they would. But definitely exciting for the team.
I would say this shouldn't be a surprise because they were undefeated in the bubble last season, and they have a young team with Ayton and Booker. Booker, by the way, came out as a freshman out of college, so he's played, you know, whatever 4 or 5 seasons, but he's basically age-wise almost an NBA like second-year player compared to some of these other guys. So I like the Suns team. You talk about positioning, certainly. I agree with you. They get the 4 seed and they play the Lakers in the second round, they're out. But I'm counting on the Suns to get the finals, and this early start will help them when you look at some of these other teams like the Nuggets and the Mavericks and the Clippers who have started worse than them. These wins do count right now, and because of that hot early start, they could get the 2 seed. And if they get the 2 seed, I'd almost lock them into the Western Conference Finals. Where
the Suns probably have the best players at video games in the NBA. Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, very good at 2K, as we saw in the 2K tournament during quarantine.
Who won?
I can't remember who won the tournament. I think it was Booker, but I can't recall. It was Booker or Ayton, I believe.
Okay.
Well, we got one more overreaction that we can talk about in the NBA. A little bit of a teaser for you, Common. LaMelo Ball is the youngest player in NBA history to put up a triple-double in a game. Is it an overreaction? Can he play in the NBA? Can't he play in the NBA? What say you?
Overreaction. He can't play in the NBA because he's still shooting like 40%. LaMelo Ball
is like 43.
A lesser version of Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook is the most overrated athlete in the history of sports. He puts up these triple-doubles, shooting 40% from the field, gets like 5-6 turnovers a game. Russell Westbrook consistently leads the NBA or is second in turnovers, consistently is among the lowest field goal percentage guys in the league. I think that LaMelo Ball is going to put up triple-doubles, and he's going to do it while he turns the ball over, and he's going to do it while he shoots 40% from the floor. So can he be an overrated NBA player? Yes, he can be overrated, but I don't think he's going to be very good. He did say he gets rebounds, though, because he played a lot of horse growing up. So credit to him for doing that. His triple-double, though, consists of like 10 points. It's not one of those 30-point or Doncic or LeBron triple-doubles.
Just wanted to throw that one out there. I thought it'd be a little fun to
but this rookie
poke
class,
the bear.
This rookie class is horrendous, though. He could win NBA Rookie of the Year because of how bad this rookie class is, as I said it would be.
I mean, we're like 10 games into the season.
It's an segment, Drew. That's the point of
Oh,
this.
oh
We're
gosh.
supposed to overreact like I am and putting the Suns in the Western Conference Finals.
I'm just excited for the locks of the week. I can't remember. I haven't tracked them, so I'm ready for the standings.
Yes, you're now one game back behind me. Only one game back.
Oh, it was a
Go over the
bloodbath
results
of a
from
week.
last week's. Go over the results. Let's hear them.
The results from last week, I'm almost afraid to give the results from last week. Let's just say that Tom and I did very, very poorly.
About as poor as we could.
Well, let's just say Wild Card Weekend is wild in the NFL, and Tom and I did not know what we were doing. Meanwhile, Drew Brackett was the expert of Wild Card Weekend, hitting both NFL bets. You did, however, miss the Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund under 2.5, but it was like 0-0 at halftime. They got like 3 goals in the second half, so you just barely missed it. Drew Brackett, you're now one game back of second place for me. I'm afraid to read off our records, though, because it'll make us look bad.
Read off your records, please.
15, 19, and 2. I was 0-3 last week. You're 14, 20, and 2, and Tom is 13 and 23. Ouch.
Why don't you remind us what yours and Tom's locks were last week?
Well, last week, I had the Steelers covering against the Browns until the Browns pulled the craziest thing I've seen in the history of sports, honestly. Not the fact that they won, but the fact that they were up 28-0 in Pittsburgh. I can't remember seeing a crazier thing in sports history, honestly. The Bears just barely didn't cover for me. I had them like plus 9.5. Mm-hmm. They lost by like 12. They didn't kick the extra point or 2-point conversion. And the Titans did not beat the Ravens, did not cover 3.5. So, yeah, I finished 99.5 percentile in NFL picks. Only 0.5% of the country picked better. So I know how to do picks, but I don't know how to do locks. Tom Castleman went for the NFL overs. They went Bills Colts by a point. Ravens Titans, he missed miserably. Mm-hmm. And the Lakers somehow didn't cover against the Ja Morant-less Grizzlies, which speaks to this NBA season early on. It's any guessing game. The Lakers, by the way, undefeated on the road, 500 at home. So go figure. Who knows what's happening in the NBA? It's all a guessing game. So, yes, Drew Brackett, you were the champion last week. Tom and I combined for a total of 0 wins.
Incredible stuff. Well, I'll get started with this week's locks of the week. Drew locks of the week. I guess Drew's locks of the week. I'm going to go to the Bundesliga. Well, again, Saturday morning, Wolfsburg and Leipzig under 2.5 goals. Hopefully they can actually not score in the second half this time. Moving to the NFL Saturday afternoon. Love the Rams +7 over the Packers in Green Bay. And then on Sunday, the Chiefs and the Browns game, that over-under 56. That's too high for me. Take under 56 in the Browns Chiefs game.
All righty. I've got a 3-0 week coming for you. I had the 3-0 weeks earlier in the season. I've been ice cold the last couple weeks. We're going to heat up again. I got national championship game tonight. If you're listening, you might be listening right before the game starts. Ohio State +9 against Alabama. I think Alabama wins, but I think Justin Fields is too good. He keeps it close. NBA tonight. The Blazers playing pretty good the last couple games. The Raptors are struggling. I got the Blazers -4.5 over the Raptors. And finally, this is the one I'm probably going to get wrong, so you probably want to pick against me. But early in the season, I picked against Lamar Jackson, and I was right. Late in the season, I picked against him, and I was wrong. But I'm going to take the Bills -2.5 over the Ravens. I'm going to keep picking against Lamar Jackson. Give me Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills winning by a field goal or more with that explosive offense.
All right, and for my locks of the week, it is the national championship game for football, so I'm going to go with all 3 of my picks coming in the game tonight. So first off, that's a really big number on the total. I'm going to take the under, feeling a little bit burned off the NFL, so I should probably fade myself. I'm not going to. I'm going to stick with the under on points at 74.5. found a little prop at minus 155 that both teams score at least 30 points. So I'm going to take that one. And then minus, I believe it's 145. I have to find Alabama's covering a 0.5 point spread at the end of the second quarter. So Alabama will have the lead heading into halftime. I'm going to lock that one in as well.
Interesting. The Bama end of the...
Tom, that's probably end of the first quarter. You might have misread that.
I had it originally as first quarter. I have to go back and find it again. They changed it to -3 on the first quarter. They left it at minus 1/2 at the
so half a point.
Half a point.
There must have been a glitch in the system.
I'm going to go and double check on Bovada right now, just to make sure that I have.
Yeah, that's fishy. We call
Let me see.
We call BS on that one.
Let me see. I don't want futures.
Plus half if the game line is like 9.
Or minus half.
Yeah, minus.
And maybe it's they win the second quarter by half a point.
That's probably what it is, Tom.
Leading overall, maybe just that specific quarter. It can get pretty hairy when you're betting quarters.
Okay, I think it is at the end of the quarter. It has right now, for the first quarter, Alabama is -3 in the first, and then they have it as minus 0.5 for each of the quarters after that.
So that means they have to win the second quarter, not be up by 1 at halftime. They have to outscore.
That makes more sense.
13.
Correct.
Okay, I'll go with Alabama covering the second quarter then.
Okay. So, oh wow, that's going to be a fun lock to track for Tom. The second quarter, he's going to be locked in.
It's always fun. Actually, hang on a sec.
Oh,
I can't do that. It's too juiced.
How juiced is it?
It's minus 230 on that one. So
that's pretty.
You're getting no money, Tom. You're getting no money.
I'm getting no money.
Why don't you do the first quarter -3? That one's probably better juice.
No, it's about the same.
Huh.
Man, my apologies. I hadn't checked that number. Let's see.
While you do that, I will say this real quickly. I want to make sure.
Tommy can rant about something.
No. I just wanted to make sure I understood this. So you have under 75, but you have both teams scoring over 30.
Correct.
He is under 74.5, I believe, is what his number is what he said.
Okay. So that's kind of interesting because the likelihood of that happening where both go over 30 and yet it goes under, I don't know, interesting.
I guess Tom's final score is 35-31 maybe?
Yeah. It's 2 touchdowns within the margin error. I'll take for minus 111 Trey Sermon over 115 rush yards. How about that? I'll do a player prop.
Wow, okay.
Works.
Glad we got that sorted out.
Of Derrick Henry over 120.5 rush yards did not go well over the weekend for those that had Derrick Henry over 120.5 rush yards. So, anyway,
unfortunate.
So, actually, 2 of the statements or 2 of the locks of the week for me are tonight, and all 3 of Tom's are tonight. So we'll know.
I like going themed.
For us after tonight. Meanwhile, Drew has to sweat it out this weekend.
Yeah, I got to get up early, turn on that BNTV, and get my Bundesliga going.
I love it. Bundesliga is on ESPN Plus, by the way.
Sorry.
On ESPN Plus every weekend. It's just great theater. The Bundesliga is really up and coming. I think it's joining the ranks of La Liga and the Premier League as the top league in the world, as those 2 leagues are down a little bit, Bundesliga up a little bit, right in the mix for the best league in the world. Statement of the week time, guys. What do we have?
I will lead off with a statement coming out of Houston, Texas, good old USA. In this age of player empowerment, no team has made a bigger hash of their new front office search than the Houston Texans. Team owner Cal McNair hired a search firm to engineer a short list of candidates for the franchise's general manager opening and solicited his own quarterback's input as well. Instead of listening to the people that he paid and solicited, Cal McNair went off the short list, went away from any of the recommendations, and hired New England's director of player personnel, Nick Caserio. Now, to be clear, according to reports, Watson's input was to merely have ownership interview some candidates. The quarterback didn't actually expect his opinion to carry any sort of weight or as a demand that they should hire the person, just here are some people to talk to. It is this fact that the ownership asked his opinion and then completely ignored him is what bothers Watson the most. The ripples of this are widespread, but I'll stick to the most visible one for fans. Deshaun Watson. Reports are saying that the young QB who just signed a lucrative 5-year extension is livid at this process and at the result, and may go as so far as to demand a trade and or hold out and stay away from the Houston Texans franchise. I do believe that there should be a separation of power between players and management, but when you open that door, you better make good on your players' input, especially your star players, because if not, you end up with a horrible situation like this. P.S. Ryan Pace, pick up the phone.
Yeah, I hope the Bears get Deshaun Watson. That would be incredible.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true. Can you imagine the Bears getting one of the probably top 5 best QBs in the NFL, but I argue top 3 best young QBs if we take out Rodgers, Brady,
sure.
Even Brees. I mean, Brees probably isn't top 5 anymore anyways, but still, that would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, can't disagree with you. Drew, what do you got? Short and sweet?
Yeah, one of my previous statements / salutes / comments of the week was about the Bears and the Nickelodeon game that the NFL had, and I'm not sure about you guys, but I definitely watched it for about 3 quarters, and it was very entertaining. You know, kind of took you back to your childhood. They had SpongeBob references. You know, the commentators, Noah Eagle and Nate Burleson, they had a lot of references to Nickelodeon shows, and it was quite entertaining. And then you had kind of the third person in the booth was Gabrielle Green, I think was her name. And she honestly, I think that was her first football game that she ever watched. And so it was really interesting because she was really excited on the first punt. She was just overjoyed about the punt and how cool it was. And, oh, my gosh, this is happening. And so you had 3 people who, you know, it was pretty low-key broadcast. And, you know, I love Romo. I love Nance. But it was definitely a good change of pace. You know, you had your beverage there. You know, had some snacks. You're just kind of watching the game. And obviously, if it was like the Chiefs against, you know, the Packers, I don't know if I'd want that. But in a game where it's the Saints and the Bears are just completely in the bag. It's like, yeah, let's turn on Nickelodeon and, you know, watch the kickers kick into SpongeBob in between the outrights. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I watched about the first half of the first quarter. I enjoyed it also, but I did have to go back to Tony Romo since I love listening to Nance and Romo. But I thought they did a pretty good job with it. I love the little splashes they did when guys scored a touchdown. What was even better than the broadcast itself was all the jokes and comments about it on Twitter. That's what I was actually following along as well.
Jokes?
Like positive, negative. It was funny.
Okay.
And by the way, Mitchell Trubisky, the dumpster fire of a bitch, was somehow voted the MVP of this game. They call it the MVP Nickelodeon Valuable Player or NMVP, whatever it is, and it's now on its Football Reference and Wikipedia page. It's all over, and it makes me question the youth and how they voted for Trubisky. What game were they watching?
It's also encouraging the Bears to keep Trubisky.
Yikes.
You're never too young to learn, and from what I saw, Nickelodeon and NFL are already talking about doing this for more games. From what I was seeing on Twitter, a lot of my sports follows that I have, they have kids that are kind of like in that 5 to 8-year-old range, and they said that their kids have never been more engaged with football than watching that game. So that's a brilliant marketing move that the NFL has played on and adding to its variety of broadcasting options. Also, if we want to take it this way, I'm pretty sure that the first F-bomb ever dropped in Nickelodeon history Cordero Patterson.
Yes,
And,
that was incredible.
How can you not have a delay on that? I think that was probably the only mistake out of all of this. It's just like there's no fans in the stands. These players aren't going to be, modifying their language or behavior because like, oh, this game's going to be on Nickelodeon. You got to run like a 10-second delay there or give you something to work with.
Yeah, the official turned on his mic and was messing around, putzing around, and then a player came by and dropped it. It was incredible.
And he was facing the camera. You see the mouth. There's no way to hide it. No way to hide it.
Introducing the kids to the realities of the game.
Yeah.
My statement of the week is this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the New Orleans Saints, and the Buffalo Bills. What do those three teams have in common? They played their starters at least a half or the entire game week 17. The Pittsburgh Steelers did not play their starters in week 17. Life is about living life. It's not about being scared. Oh, I'm scared. My team's going to get hurt in week 17, so I'm not going to play my starters. I'm not saying you have to play them the whole game if everything is clinched. If you're up in the game the way the Bills did it, they were up at halftime. They sat them down the second half. But I think there's something to be said about establishing your rhythm, especially when your team has been struggling, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin, undoubtedly one of the best coaches in the NFL, but Mike Tomlin screwed it up big time by resting Ben Roethlisberger, T.J. Watt, also their two best players on defense and offense, and it showed. It showed because they got behind 28-0 and they played very sloppy. They had 3 turnovers in the first quarter alone, and it scares me. I know the numbers are that Andy Reid is very good after a bye week, but as a Chiefs fan and as someone who's been riding this Chiefs train all along since the last 2 years, even before they won the Super Bowl, it scares me that they're not going to play for 3 weeks in a row in essence. Yes, you can get hurt. It's possible. But we've seen it. It keeps happening. You rest your guys in week 17, that's karma. You're not as sharp, and you don't deliver the results. The Steelers went for that, and it cost them the game because I think if they had played their starters in week 17, they don't come out as sloppy as the start, and they pull out the win. So memo to NFL week 17, play your starters at least a half, and a memo to me, I'm honestly concerned about the Chiefs game. I've been all aboard. There's no chance the Chiefs will lose. I think because of the karma of resting their guys in week 17, there is now about a 42% chance the Chiefs lose to the Browns.
That high?
That high.
How did you arrive at 42%? I'm curious.
How does he arrive at any of the percents that he throws out and during all these shows? 67.5% sure, Drew.
Well, Tom, I was just thinking the Chiefs are still more likely to win. I don't call it a toss-up, so I thought 42% was probably like a good random number.
I have it about 83%.
83, what do you got, Drew?
Percent what? That they win or cover?
That they win, the Chiefs, straight up.
Oh, yeah, it's like 85.
85, okay. So I'm the least confident. The Chiefs homer on the show is the least confident in the Chiefs.
That's the way it always has to go. The homer's always going to be the most, fraught with peril, the most worried about the other shoe dropping. That's completely understandable.
Absolutely. All right, well, guys, that does it for Salute Your Sports Week 14 National Championship game. We all have Alabama winning. Should be a good game. Have a good one, everyone.